Imagine spending your entire life working hard, day in and day out. You show up, put in the hours, and never ask for much. But then, even at 80 years old, you're still on the job, still pushing through the long days, because you have no other choice. That's exactly what happened to one man, until Keanu Reeves walked back into his life. Keanu Reeves is known for being one of the most humble and generous stars in Hollywood. Despite his fame, he's never forgotten where he came from. But even he wasn't prepared for what he was about to discover when he returned to his old high school. As he walked through the hallways, memories of his teenage years came flooding back. But then, something made him stop in his tracks. The janitor, the same one who had been there when he was a student. Decades had passed, but there he was, still mopping the floors, still working late nights, still carrying the weight of school on his shoulders. Keanu couldn't just walk away. What he did next left everyone speechless. For over 60 years, Mr. Jenkins wasn't just a janitor at Keanu Reeves' old high school. He was part of the school's heart. Every morning, he unlocked the doors before the first students arrived. Every afternoon, he cleaned up after the rush of teenagers heading home. He knew every hallway, every classroom, and probably every secret conversation whispered between lockers. But more than that, he knew the students. He'd offer a kind word when someone was having a rough day, share a joke to lighten the mood, and lend an ear when no one else seemed to be listening. He never asked for recognition. He just did his job, year after year, because that's the kind of man he was. Back when Keanu was just a regular teenager walking those same halls, he saw Mr. Jenkins every day. Before the red carpets and blockbuster movies, before he was a household name, Keanu was just another kid with big dreams and no idea where life would take him. Some days, he'd stop and chat with Mr. Jenkins during lunch or after school. He noticed how the janitor treated everyone with kindness, no matter who they were. It didn't matter if you were the star athlete or the quiet kid in the back of the class. Mr. Jenkins had time for you. Keanu didn't grow up in luxury. His childhood was filled with struggles, moving from place to place, sometimes unsure of what came next. Maybe that's why he connected with people like Mr. Jenkins, the kind of people who worked hard, but rarely got the credit they deserved. Back then, he had no idea that one day he'd return to this school as a successful actor. And he definitely never imagined he'd find Mr. Jenkins still working there, still mopping the same floors, decades later. Years had passed since Keanu Reeves last walked the halls of his old high school. Life had taken him far from those classrooms and lunch tables, straight to the bright lights of Hollywood. He had starred in some of the biggest movies in the world, earned millions, and built a career most could only dream of. But no matter how much success he found, he never forgot where he came from. So, when he had the chance to visit his high school again, he didn't think twice. Walking through the familiar hallways, memories flooded back. The worn-out lockers, the sound of distant chatter, even the faint smell of old textbooks, it all felt the same. But then, something caught his eye. Someone, an old man, slightly hunched over, pushing a mop across the floor. His uniform was the same, his movements slow but steady. And then it hit him. It was Mr. Jenkins. At first, Keanu thought maybe he was imagining it. Maybe it was just someone who looked like him. But no, it was him. The same man who had been cleaning these halls when Keanu was a teenager was still here, doing the same job. Only now, he was 80 years old. Keanu stopped in his tracks, watching as Mr. Jenkins wrung out the mop and kept going, like he had done every day for decades. His hands were rough, his back slightly bent from years of hard work. It didn't seem right. Keanu had gone on to live an incredible life, traveling the world, making millions, doing what he loved. And yet, here was Mr. Jenkins, still working, still pushing through long shifts, still making sure the floors were spotless. The sight hit Keanu like a ton of bricks. How could this man, who had given so much to the school, still be working at his age? He should have been at home, enjoying his retirement, not mopping floors. Keanu felt something deep inside him, an urge to do something. He couldn't just walk past. Not this time. Keanu didn't hesitate. He walked straight toward Mr. Jenkins, his footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway. The old janitor looked up, a little surprised to see someone approaching him. At first, he squinted, studying the man standing in front of him. And then his eyes widened. "Keanu," Mr. Jenkins said, tilting his head. "Is that really you?" Keanu smiled. "It's me, Mr. Jenkins." For a moment, they just stood there, caught in a strange mix of past and present. Mr. Jenkins chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. "Never thought I'd see you walk these halls again." Keanu glanced at the mop in the janitor's hands. "I never thought I'd see you still working here." They found an old bench in the hallway and sat down. The conversation started light. Memories of the past, old stories about students long gone. But soon, Keanu had to ask the question that had been bothering him since he saw Mr. Jenkins holding that mop. "Why are you still working, Mr. Jenkins?" Keanu asked gently. "You should be retired, relaxing, enjoying life." Mr. Jenkins let out a tired sigh. "Retirement ain't cheap, kid. Gotta keep the lights on, keep food on the table." He looked down at his worn-out hands. "Ain't got much saved up. Social Security helps, but it ain't enough." Keanu's heart sank. This man had spent his whole life taking care of the school, looking out for kids, making sure everything ran smoothly. And now, at 80 years old, he was still working just to survive. It didn't sit right with him. Most people in Keanu's position would have maybe given a handshake, said some kind words, and walked away. But Keanu wasn't most people. He couldn't just leave knowing Mr. Jenkins was struggling. He had to do something. The next day, Keanu made a few phone calls. He didn't just want to help. He wanted to change Mr. Jenkins' life. And he did. First, he found out exactly what Mr. Jenkins owed: medical bills, rent, any debt that was holding him down. And then he paid it all off. Every last cent. Then he set up a retirement fund. Enough money so that Mr. Jenkins would never have to work again. No more long nights mopping floors. No more worrying about bills. And finally, Keanu bought him a house. A place where he could finally rest. Where he could wake up every morning without worrying about going to work at 80 years old. When Keanu told him, Mr. Jenkins was speechless. He tried to protest, but Keanu wouldn't hear it. "You've taken care of so many people," Keanu said. "Now it's time for someone to take care of you." Tears welled up in Mr. Jenkins' eyes. "I don't even know what to say," he whispered. Keanu just smiled. "Just promise me one thing. Enjoy your life." Word spread fast. What Keanu had done wasn't just a small act of kindness. It was life-changing. Within hours, the story made its way online. Social media exploded with praise, with thousands of people sharing the heartwarming news. "This is why we love Keanu Reeves," one person tweeted. "A true class act. This man has a heart of gold," another wrote. News outlets picked it up, and soon, headlines were everywhere. "Keanu Reeves changes life of 80-year-old janitor," read one. "Hollywood star gives back in the most unbelievable way," said another. It wasn't just about the money. People were moved by the fact that Keanu noticed Mr. Jenkins. In a world where so many people overlook the struggles of others, Keanu had stopped, paid attention, and done something about it. Meanwhile, Mr. Jenkins was still in shock, sitting in his new home, his hands resting on the arm of a chair he never thought he'd own. He shook his head in disbelief. "Never thought a kid from my hallways would change my life like this," he said quietly. "I just did my job. Never expected anything in return." And that was the thing. Mr. Jenkins never asked for recognition, never sought out help. He worked hard because that's what he knew. But now, for the first time in his life, he didn't have to. He could wake up without worrying about bills. He could rest without the weight of work on his shoulders. And it was all because of a former student who hadn't forgotten him. As the news continued to spread, people started sharing their own stories of Keanu's kindness. The time he gave up his seat on the subway. The millions he quietly donated to charity. The way he treated everyone, no matter their status, with respect. This was just another reminder of the kind of person he was. Keanu never made a big deal out of what he did. He didn't post about it. He didn't look for attention. He simply saw someone in need and stepped up. In the end, the story wasn't just about a celebrity helping someone. It was about something bigger. It was about noticing the people who are often overlooked. About remembering those who made an impact on us, even in small ways. and about using success for something greater than just personal gain. Keanu Reeves proved once again why he's one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, not just for his movies, but for his heart. How many people do we walk past every day without realizing their struggles? The quiet workers, the ones who show up no matter what, the ones who never ask for help. Mr. Jenkins was one of them, dedicated, hard-working, and forgotten by most. But Keanu didn't forget. He proved that kindness isn't just about grand gestures. It's about paying attention, about seeing the people who are often overlooked. Not everyone has the resources to change someone's life the way Keanu did, but we all have the power to make a difference. A simple thank you, a small act of kindness, even just acknowledging someone's effort, it all matters. So, what do you think of Keanu's gesture? Would you do the same if you had the chance? Let us know in the comments. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you see someone working hard in the background, you'll take a moment to appreciate them.